Hello again, my lovely fifth graders. So this review lesson for today is chapter 9, lesson 5, and we are adding unlike fractions. So remember, like fractions are fractions that already have the same denominator. Unlike fractions are the ones that have different denominators. So when we're adding or subtracting them, we cannot add or subtract them together until they have the same denominator. So the unlike fractions, we have to find our least common denominator. Okay. So again, like I was just saying, unlike fractions, we need to find the LCD, the lowest common denominator, before we can add them together. So unlike fractions have different denominators. Before you can add unlike fractions, one or both of the fractions must be renamed so that they have a common denominator. So we're going to do practice with this. We need to find the LCM, the least common multiple, in order to have our LCD, our lowest common denominator. Okay, so our first problem here, example 1, is in the morning, an octopus swam for 1/3 of an hour, and in the afternoon, the octopus swam for 1/4 of an hour. For how much of 1 hour did the octopus swim all together? So remember, pointing out for word problems, the word all together tells us that we will be adding. We want to know all of it, okay? So they do some work for us down here. So the first thing that we can do is we can find, they already found it for us, but I want to show you how to find it. We're going to find our least common multiple. So we need to take our denominators. When we're finding our common denominators, we got to take the denominators and find the multiples for them. So 3 and 4. So my multiples for 3, if you know them, remember multiples are where we count by 3. So 3, 6, 9, 12. Some of you may know I can stop there. And then 4, I start with the first number always. So 4, 8, 12. So we can see right there by doing the multiples, the lowest common multiple is 12. So we can see down here that they changed it to 12. And then they had to ask themselves, okay, 3 times what gets us 12? 3 times 4. Because we multiply the bottom by 4, we need to know when we're doing fractions, whatever we do to the bottom, we have to do the same thing to the top. I cannot multiply the bottom by 4 and the top by 2. Whatever I multiply the bottom by, the same exact number has to be multiplied on the top. So because 3 times 4 was 12, we now have to do 1 times 4, which gives us that 4 right there that they found for us. Okay, and then they ask themselves, 4 times what gets me 12? Okay, we're just going opposite there. 4 times 3 gives me 12. Because the bottom was multiplied by 3, now the top has to be multiplied by 3. So 1 times 3 gives me that 3 right there that they got. Okay, now that they both have the same denominator, they both have 12. Now we go down here and we can see all we do when we're adding or subtracting is we add and subtract the numerator. When we're adding or subtracting the denominator, we do not touch. That's why we found a common denominator, so that it stays the same. And all we do is add the numerator. So we do 4 plus 3, which would give me 7. Denominator stays the same at 12. So my answer ends up being 7/12. Okay, that's our first example. Let's look at our example number 2. Okay, so example number 2 says, Catalina spent 1/5 of her free time reading and 7/10 of her free time practicing her flute. What fraction of her free time did she spend reading and practicing her flute? So we want to know, combining 1/5 and 7/10, how much total did she spend practicing her flute and reading? So we've got to add those two numbers together. So like we done the last one, we're going to take our two denominators, 5 and 10, and we need to find the least common multiple, the LCM. 5 and 10. And hopefully, some of you guys may not need to write these out because we can tell. So let's count by 5s. 5, 10. Oh, and I can stop right there because I know that the first number down here is 10 itself. Oops, I had to circle that. So my LCM is 10. So you can see down here, they put their new denominator as 10. Now, you can notice that 7/10, they already have a denominator of 10. So technically, 10 times 1 gets me 10, which means 7 times 1 would give me 7. So that one we know, whenever the denominator does not change, the numerator does not need to change either. Because our lowest common denominator stayed at 10, that means 7/10 does not need to change. But 1/5 here did not have 10 as the denominator, so that means that fraction needs to change. So you can see right here, they did 5 times 2 got me 10, which means they have to do the same thing to the numerator and do 1 times 2, which is 2. So now if I just take my numerators, I do not add my denominators. We do not do 10 plus 10. We only do the 2 plus 7, which would get us 9. So the answer for that example is 9/10. Okay? Got a few more examples to do to make sure we've got this down. Okay, so we've got 2 examples here. It says add and write each in simplest form. So on this one, we have 5 and 2. We cannot add them together because they do not have the same denominator. So we're going to take them over here, the 5 and the 2, because those are my denominators. That's what I need to find. This is my lowest common denominator. So let's count by 5s. 5, 10. I can keep going if I want, 15, but I think I'm going to stop. I think I probably found my lowest common multiple. So I'm going to count by 2s, 2, 4, 6. Sorry, my numbers are a little bit messy. 8 and 10. Oh, so I can see right there, my lowest common multiple is 10. So what I'm going to do is my new denominator for both of these is 10. 10 and 10. Okay, so I'm going from 2/5 and 1/2 to where I need a denominator of 10 for both. So the first thing I'm going to ask myself is 5 times what gets me to 10? Well, I should know 5 times 2 gives me 10, which means at the top I need to do 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 would give me 4. So my new fraction for 2/5 is actually 4/10. And then I ask myself 2 times what gets me 10? 2 times 5, which means I also need to do 1 times 5. So I have 4/10 plus 5/10. I do not add the denominators, only the numerators, which would end up giving me 9/10 on that one, 9/10. Okay, this next one, we have 3/4 plus 1/8. So we need to take our 2 denominators, which are 4 and 8. And we need to find our multiples. So let's count by 4s. We have 4 and 8. Oh, and I know that I start with 8 down here, so I'm not even going to do any more for 4 because I know right here my least common multiple is 8. So that means my denominator, my LCD for both of these fractions is going to be 8. Okay, so I need to ask myself, how do I get from 4 to that 8? What would I multiply 4 by to get to the 8 I need? I would multiply 2, which means that I'm also going to multiply 3 times 2. 3 times 2 gives me 6. Okay, so there's my new fraction. 3/4 turns into 6/8. Oh, and then I look, 8 to 8. It didn't change. So if you want, you can say, okay, well, 8 times 1 is 8. And 1 times 1 keeps me that 1. Or you can tell yourself, okay, 8, that means my numerator is going to stay the same at 1. And then all I do is add my numerators. 6 plus 1 gives me 7. Denominator stays the same as 8. So our final answer on that one is 7/8. Okay, there's 2 more example problems for you. Let's keep going. Okay, 2 more. There we go. Okay, so on this one, again, the directions are the same. It says add and then write each in simplest form. So we've got 1/3 plus 1/5. So the first step for us is to find our lowest common multiple so we can use that as our denominator. So my multiples count by 3. If you're at home, count it out. 3, 6, keep going. Say it to yourself. 9, 12, 15. And some of you know I can stop there. Why? Because I'm pretty sure I already have my common multiple with 5. I'm going to start 5, 10, 15. Oh, yep. So my least common multiple here ended up being that 15, which means now I need my denominator for both of them to be 15. Okay, so if I look at this, I had a 3 and a 5. Neither one of those stayed the same. Going to 15, which means both of my fractions are going to change. So what did I multiply 3 by to get to 15? Say it if you know it. 5. Because I multiplied the bottom by 5, that means I also have to do 1 times 5. So my new numerator, 1/3, turns into 5/15. And then say it if you know it. 5 times what gets me 15? Well, it's just the opposite of what we just did. So that's 3. So I multiply 1 times 3 to give me 3. My last step is to now add the numerators, not the denominators. So 5 plus 3 would give me 8. 15 stays the same. So I end up with 8/15. Okay, one more problem on this page. We've got 12 and 4. And again, some of you may be able to see what the multiple is going to be before you even do this. So I'm going to do a couple of 12s. I'm just going to do 12 and then 24. And then I'm going to check because I know that 4 can go into one of those numbers. Let's see which one's first. So say it if you know 4, 8. Oh, and there we go. 12. So our least common multiple right there is 12, which means now my denominator for both of them needs to be 12. And then we got to look at what we need to change here. So if I look, 5 12s. Oh, well, 12 and 12 didn't change. So that means my 5 can stay the same. Or you could ask yourself, 12 times 1, and then 5 times 1. Again, it would stay the same. But on this one, however, 4, that one changed. So what did we do to get from 4 to 12? 4 times what got me 12? The answer is 3. Because I multiply the bottom by 3, I also need to multiply the top by 3. 1 times 3 gives me my new numerator, which is 3. So I end up with 8/12. Now, boys and girls, part of the directions here are right in simplest form. Some of you may know looking at this is not in simplest form. And the easy way I can tell for this one is 8 and 12 are both even numbers, which means I can divide them both by 2. But the other way you can do it is you can ask yourself what the factors are for 8. So remember, factors are different than multiples. Factors are numbers that multiply together to get that number. So think about numbers that multiply together to get 8. So I know I have 1, 2, 4, and 8. Okay, and then 12, I've got 1, 2, I've got 6, 12. I'm missing 2 other ones. What other 2 numbers multiply together to get 12? Say it if you know it. 3 and 4. So remember when you're looking for your factors when you're simplifying, we did that previous lesson on simplifying. You're looking for the GCF, and that G stands for greatest common factor. So when we're looking at factors, we want the biggest one. So I can see they both have 1 and they both have 2, but those aren't the biggest ones. If you can see it, they both have 4. We want the greatest common factor of 4. So if you remember the lesson on simplifying, we just did it last week. Then you take your GCF, your factor, and you divide the top and bottom of your fraction by that number. So ask yourself, 8 divided by 4 gives me what? 2. And 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. So the correct answer that is simplified should be 2/3. Okay? So if you get 8/12, it's not that you're wrong, you're just not done yet. You have to make sure you simplify. You will lose points in the future when you're in school if you do not simplify. You have to know that strategy of simplifying your answers, okay? So I believe we have just one more set of problems. Yep, 2 more, okay guys? So 2 more examples, and then you'll be able to get started on your assignment. So this one, it's asking for our unknown here, x being our variable, which is the unknown. So x for this one is the whole answer. So we're just gonna solve it like we regularly do. And my denominators are 12 and 3. So that means I need to find my multiples for 12 and 3. And you know what? I can see right here, 12, and I know 3 can go into 12. So I'm just gonna double check. 3, 6, 9, 12. Yep, 3 can go into 12. So I had a feeling that was going to be our lowest common multiple. So that means our denominator for both of these is now going to be 12. Okay, so 7/12, the 12 stayed the same, which means the 7 can stay the same. So 7 stays a 7. But I need to ask myself, 3 times what gives me 12? Should know, 3 times 4. So I'm going to do the top. 1 times 4 gives me 4. Now we know all I have to do is add the numerators. 7 plus 4 would give me 11. Do I add the numerator or the denominators? Nope. The denominator should just stay 12. Okay, one more, and I want you guys to notice on this one, it's not asking for the whole answer, it's just asking for the denominator here, which is y. So, simple way we can figure this out, my dears, is 16. I want to show you this trick. Let's find our lowest common multiple on this one, okay? So, we have 16 and 8. So, let's do our multiples for 8 first. 8, what comes after 8? 16. Okay, so if my least common multiple is 16, I want you guys to think about, if I were to change this 8 to a 16, do I add my denominators when I get over here? No, my denominators always stay the same. So this is really all the work we have to do because they're only asking us for y. They already gave us the numerator, they just need the denominator. Right here, we just found our new denominator. We would go through right here and we would find our new fractions and add them together. But we should know by now, we do not add the denominators, we only add the numerators, which means I don't even have to finish solving this. I know that no matter what my numerators end up being, my denominator is gonna stay 16, okay? If you need to rewatch this video, you guys, for some more practice, please do so, but go ahead and get your assignments done on iReady and your reteach, whatever your teacher has assigned you for math this week, and I'll see you for the next lesson, okay? Please reach out to your teacher if you have any questions about any of this.